When I was a teenager, I saw this speech therapist. I was about 16 at the time, and I hadn't seen any speech therapist for years. But a classmate of mine recommended this speech therapist to me, so I went to go see her. She was a school speech therapist, so I saw her during one of my classes. And I remember waiting in the waiting room to go see her, and then she called me in. She was very friendly and very positive. And then the first thing she said to me was that I had elective mutism. Elective mutism, which is a term that's been outdated since the 1980s. What she meant is that I had selective mutism. I currently have selective mutism years later. But she kept using the term elective mutism, which is quite odd because if you Google the term elective mutism, Google will correct you and say, do you mean selective mutism? This was even all those years ago, because after I saw the speech therapist, I went home and Googled elective mutism and found out that Google corrected me. That was the term she used. And immediately I just thought, oh, okay, I guess she doesn't really know anything about this condition. So she kept telling me that I had elective mutism, and she expressed a lot of concern for my future, as almost every single adult I'd ever seen did. And she said that she only knew one other child who was like me, who didn't talk. And this other child was abused by a family member. They had experienced trauma, and then they stopped talking as a result of that. But she then proceeded to tell me that I was choosing not to talk. She kind of listed all the ways in which I was making my life harder by choosing not to talk. Like, how am I going to pass my driver's lessons? How am I going to go to college? How am I going to get a job? How am I going to get married? Are you not going to talk to your husband? These things. I remember her specifically saying that to me, which is kind of odd, because I was 16 at the time, and she didn't know anything about me. And this kind of thing happens all the time. I was often asked, how am I going to get through high school without being able to talk? How am I going to go to college without being able to talk? How am I going to get a job without being able to talk? How am I going to do anything without being able to talk? Like, how are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? We're just worried about you. We're just worried about your future. We want you to be able to speak. Hearing these things repeated over and over and over and over all your life, you need to be able to talk once you reach junior high. You need to be able to talk in a year. I heard this all the time as a kid. You have to talk once you reach X stage. It was a fear-mongering tactic. Every adult tried every tactic in the book to try to get me to speak without ever understanding why I wasn't able to speak. People don't even know now why I'm not able to talk. It's only after I released my song Mutant that people have somewhat started to understand. It's not until I made an effort to try to open up and explain to people that people are starting to finally see things from my perspective and understand what selective mutism is, what I was suffering through, what I was struggling with. Instead of doing all these shaming tactics and guilt tripping me, people just didn't understand. People don't know what selective mutism is. One time a teacher asked me, and this was when I was 10, and she asked me, what are you going to do if someone's hurt and they need 911, like they need emergency services? Are you just not going to call 911 or are you just going to let them suffer? Yeah, I'm just going to let them suffer. That's crazy. That's ridiculous that she said that to me. That's just crazy. That's just crazy. And she's saying that to a 10-year-old kid. I don't think people understand what social isolation is until they have experienced that. Nobody understands what social isolation truly is unless they have lived my experience. People will tell me all the time, oh, I sort of went through that. I know what it's like to be lonely. No, they don't. They really don't. They don't know what it's like to be socially isolated. They really don't know what it's like to have no friends at all for all of your formative years, for 18 years in a row. From the time you're born, essentially, to the time you're a young adult. You don't know what that's like. You don't know what it's like to be so socially isolated. I feel like I'm only about 6 or 7 years old socially. I've only had 6 or 7 years to learn how to socialize or to be social at all or to communicate because I didn't have any interaction with people. I wasn't able to do that. I didn't have the practice or anything like that for a really long time, for over a decade. I just didn't have anybody. I didn't have anyone. It's not something I want to go back to. It's one of the worst experiences in the world. I often thought that at least with everyone else, with every other condition, you always know that there's someone else out there like you. For the longest time, I thought that I was the only one in the entire world who was mute. And not because of trauma, I was just mute, but I didn't know why. Nobody knew why, because nobody knew what selective mutism was. So I thought I was the only one in the world. People treated me like I was an alien from outer space they did not know what to do with. People forced me to talk, they bribed me to talk, they tried to do everything they could to get me to say one word. It's not how it works. You can't bribe me to talk. And being able to say one word is just as hard as being able to say an entire speech in front of a crowd. It doesn't work like that. And I wish someone had taken the time to do a cursory Google search for selective mutism instead of telling me that I was choosing not to talk and using this outdated term from the 80s. I wish that someone had done that for me, and I wish they'd really looked into it instead of trying all of these tactics to force me or bribe me to talk. They would have known that the problem wasn't my mutism. The problem is not my mutism. I'm still mute now. I can't talk to a lot of people in my life now. There are times I go out in public, I can't talk, but you know what? I can still communicate. I use my phone to type. I don't actually use a text-to-speech thing because I'm not comfortable with that. But I use my phone to type usually, or I get a notepad and I write to people, and then I hand it to the person who I need to communicate with, and that's fine. If they can't see, whatever, I make the font bigger. Sometimes maybe if I run into someone who's deaf, I'll use a text-to-speech thing, like I got Google Translate on my phone, so, or I can write, I can do facial expressions. I have the ability to communicate now. The problem is the anxiety. The problem with selective mutism is the anxiety, the extreme anxiety that manifests in not being able to speak. And people treat the mutism as the problem. I go out in life and I'm able to do things without being able to speak, but I can still communicate. And I do have a lot of anxiety. I have extreme social anxiety. But I can go out and communicate with people now. People do react weirdly to me when I take out my phone and write to them. Sometimes they do. Other times, they actually react fine. People are, it's weird at first, but if you act confident, then they're fine with it. And the thing is, it's hard to act confident when you have so much anxiety, but I try to, so I found a way to communicate that works for me. Sometimes I can't talk. Like in these videos, apparently I can't talk. I'm not really comfortable doing these videos. I don't really know how to feel about this, but I can speak right now. I can sing and perform, play my own songs. I can do videos of myself where I'm performing, but I don't want to do videos of myself speaking. I don't want to make it about my voice. Right now, I found ways to communicate non-verbally. And that is the ultimate goal. It's just about being able to find ways of communicating that is comfortable for you. Like if you find you can communicate with other people, that's what matters. It's not the mutism. It's not being mute that's the problem. It's the anxiety, the crippling anxiety that prohibits you from doing anything, from doing what you want, or from being able to communicate. There are other ways to communicate besides speaking. And that's something that I've always wanted to show the world. There are other ways to communicate besides speaking, and everyone who is able to speak takes it for granted. And I wish there was more understanding from the world. That's part of why I write songs from the perspective of other people. I don't usually write songs from my own perspective. Like I've always valued understanding the experiences that are so far outside of my own comfort zone, or so outside of my own experience. Understanding the experiences of others that society finds uncomfortable or just controversial or taboo or just disgusting or whatever it is, just scary or anything like that. Because I know what it's like to be seen as that, to be outcasted, to be isolated. So it's just really important to me. And I don't want to bash any of the counselors or speech therapists or teachers or professionals or adults who I interacted with as a kid. Because I understand that everyone was trying their best to help, and they were genuinely concerned for my future. It's the lack of awareness of what selective mutism is. It's a complete lack of awareness that is a huge problem. And it made my life horrible. It made my life absolutely horrible. I have trauma from it, from growing up completely socially isolated, no friends, no support, depressed every single minute of every single day, with no hope of a future, just constantly scared of everything. And having people tell me like it's my fault, having people tell me it's my choice, having people just completely misunderstanding everything I'm going through, not trying at all to even look into the basics of it. I really don't get that. And, all because they care about me and they want to help. They're worried about my future, but it's not the right way to go about things. And to the speech therapist who I saw at 16, when she told me that she was worried about my future, I never went to college. I don't have a driver's license. I don't want to get married. I've never wanted to get married. I'm not straight, so no worries about needing to talk to a potential husband or wife or whatever. And I can support myself without speaking. I kind of took a really alternative path in life. You can support yourself. You can live independently without speaking. You just find a way to communicate without it. Now, I am able to speak in a lot of situations, but there are situations where I'm not able to speak. But I found a way to communicate, and that's what matters. To anyone who really listened to all of this, thank you. I've never really talked about this. I've never actually used my voice to say all of this. But I wanted to make a video on it. I want to make a video on the backstory to Mutant, because this is not about Mutant. I don't want to explain the song. I don't like explaining songs, but there is some context I would have to provide for Mutant to make sense. And so I'll do another video on that.